Hey everybody, welcome back to Adventure World in Godot. In this last video, we made the snail be able to turn around when he hit the edge of the platform, and oh yeah, we also ignored the bushes, and so they could go back and forth. So in this video, we're going to make the player be able to jump on top of the enemies and be able to defeat them. So let's get it started because this is going to be quite a bit of stuff we got to do, but I think we can get it done pretty quick. Alright, so one note, I have a theory on why the downward arrow was sometimes causing them to turn around, and I think it's because on our tile set when we made that, there's a tiny little gap in our... You can kind of see it right there sometimes. There's a tiny little gap, so I'm wondering if maybe the separation there is causing that problem, so you could extend this a little bit on your collision shape and maybe that might fix it. So I might try that in between videos and see if that fixes it, but that would be a little bit time consuming for this video, so let's go ahead and move on. So what I'm going to do is on the player actor, we're going to do very similar to what we did for the snail. We're going to add some raycasts down here at his feet. So let me go ahead and get started. I'm going to create another grouping node, just like I did with the we're not going to, I don't think we'll need to rotate it, but it's still nice for a organization. So I'm going to add array, and here it is right here. It's a big one. Let's make it smaller, like 10, and let's scoot it down like that. And we don't want it to stick out too far from the bottom of his feet because the impact is when it'll cause the damage to the snail, and so we don't want it to, the player to act like he's attacking it when he's actually quite a bit away. So let's try right here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate that and scoot it over here, and I'm going to duplicate another one and scoot it over on the other side. So what we're going to do is we're going to check all three of these to see if any of them collide with the snail. Alright, so okay, so let's go ahead. Now we've added the rays, and I'm not going to name these. I did name this parent node, so we'll take a look at a little trick here for that. So I'm going to jump into my player script. Now if we were looking at our level here, what I'd want, you can already see my little rays there, what I'd want is as the player comes down, I want those to make contact, and then I want to damage the snail and then move my player back up into another jump. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at how we might do that. So let me go to my player, go to the player script. So the only time we're going to check is when we're in the air, because if I'm on the floor I don't need to be looking at those rays. One other thing before I move on and forget, I need to enable these rays because by default they are off. That would have been confusing to figure out. Another thing is I'm going to change this collision mask to this third one, and oops, the reason I'm doing that is I could check with the object that I collide with and say, hey, are you an enemy? And if you are, then do that. But like we did in the last video with our other rays, we can use these collision masks to kind of crop out what we're going to be colliding with. I think that'll be more efficient. So alright, so we've got those three removed, and we've also got them enabled, and we've got them in the correct collision mask. So what I will have to do is go to my enemy snail and make sure that he has on his collision that he's also on layer 3. And just to be extra thorough, we can go to our physics layer 3 and name that enemy. Alright, so now when I look at here I'll see enemy there. Alright, so perfect. We've got all that set up, and our player is fine. So let's go back into the script. So only in the air, right? So we had in all our movement code we have if on floor else, and we know he's in the air. So right here I'm going to make a new method call to check jump attack. Alright, so that way I can move all this code out and I don't have to clutter up this function that's already getting kind of big, and I probably should move some of these things out to their own functions. But we'll just go ahead and make this one. So func check jump attack. Alright, and first thing I'm going to do here is I need to get this, I need to get this node. So I'm going to go ahead and up here do one of my variables. So on ready var, let's call it feet raise equals get node feet raise. Alright, so that will get that node, get this node and stick it in this variable. So here I'm going to do I'm going to use a loop. So I'm going to go for, and I need an indexer, so I'm just going to call this ray in feet raise. Capitalization needs to stay the same. So this will go through, dot get children. So this is a node, and all nodes have a list of children. They also have a parent, so the parent in this case would be this player node. But these three will be returned as an array here. So you can look that up here under node has it, and down here get children, and it returns an array. Alright, so back to here, run our player script, and we got a child, and each one is array, so we're going to check to see if that one's colliding. So if any of them collide, then we want this to happen. So if array.is colliding, we used that before. We can also, just to be extra sure, so if I threw some other node in here, this would crash, okay? Because that new node may not be of type raycast2d. So I can check for that. So I can say ray is raycast2d. So what this does is it says if array is a raycast2d type, right, then also check this. So that's what the and statement does. So I need a semicolon there to finish it, and my error should hopefully go away. So alright, excellent. So this will protect me from any other type of node being in here, and this is what's checking for is colliding. So if any of those come true, then I'm going to print a message, jump attack. Alright, and then we'll return. So what the return statement does is if you're inside of a function, it will immediately jump out of the function. So if I had 100 rays in here, okay, it would go through each one of them one at a time, but if any one, so even if the first one, which in this case is this one, if this one hit the monster, then it would immediately jump out and it wouldn't need to check the other 99 rays. So this is just a little bit more efficient, and also we may not want this code to run twice, because what we're going to do is cause the player to jump. So in here we're going to cause the player to jump, and we'll call that player jump. And so I need to make a new method for that. So I'm going to say function player jump, and I'll just pass for the moment. So down here, let's see, where is it? If we're on the floor and you hit the space bar, then we do these 2 lines of code, okay? And these 2 lines of code are what make us actually jump. So I'm going to remove those and replace them with this function, and then I'm going to put those 2 lines up in the function. And the reason I did that is because we would have the same 2 lines of code happening here and happening down here. So doing this, I cleaned up my code, made it look a little bit more efficient, because now I know, instead of those 2 random lines, I know, hey, I want the player to jump. So it's more descriptive of what I want to happen, as well as, if I need to, all my jump behavior is pulled into this one function. So in the future, I'd like to have it play a sound, right? So if I add a sound thing here to this method, both places that I'm causing a jump will then play the sound. So this is a nice little refactor that's going to be good for us in the long run. So okay, so I'm going to do jump attack, and I'm going to cause the player to jump. So let's go ahead and try this real quick. One other thing I forgot to do is on my enemy snail, if you look at the collider, so we have the 2 colliders. Remember, we've got the one that's for the actual snail, and then we've got this outside collider, which is for damaging the player. Now when the player comes down on top of the snail, if I made the rays really long, they would reach through this outside collision shape. But what I'd really like to happen is for the snail not to damage the player when the player jumps on it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually scoot this collision shape down, and I'm going to shrink it down a little bit, so about there, and then I'm going to scoot it down just a little bit. So I know this looks a little bit funky, but the player should probably never be damaged from the snail from underneath, because he's always going to be falling or jumping onto the snail. So I really only want the snail to be able to damage him from the sides, or if he fell on his head. So that's why I've moved this down in this shape. Okay, so let's go back to, let's go ahead and try this. It's a new game, so I should be able to just jump right off on there, and there I go. So I'm jumping, I'm not being hurt, and I'm bouncing off the top of the snail. Now if I fall down to the side and I let the snail run into me, I still get hurt just like before. So that's excellent. This is working just like I hoped it would. So the next thing we need to do is cause the snail to take damage. So I've got the player jump, that's fine. And so what I need to do is hurt the snail. So previously from the raycast we used the is colliding, right? But we can actually also return what we're colliding with, and we can do that using the ray.getCollider method. And so you can look that up, raycast 2D, and it's right here. And it returns an object, and that object is the object that you're colliding with. So back in the player script, what I want to say is if what I need to do is set this to a variable. So let's set this to, say, target equals getCollider. Okay? And then what I want to do is say if target.hasMethod hurt, then target.hurt. Alright? Trying to think if I need anything else there, but I think that's okay. Oh, one other thing I may want to do is if target comes back as null, for some reason, let's say I get through here, it shouldn't happen because is colliding will only return true if it's hitting something, and if it's hitting something it should return that. But if I wanted to be extra careful, I could just say if target and that'll just make sure that this has something in it. Alright, so that shouldn't hurt anything and should work. So let's give that a shot. Now I expect there to be a problem, and we'll see it in just a second. So the first bump, you saw I bumped off the snail, and the snail like kind of did a little knockback. That was from our knockback function back here in the actor. Now this is a little bit confusing because I'm still setting on my player, and that's because that's where I was when I was editing, but it's jumped to my actor script, which if you remember is the parent of both the player and the enemy snail. So I'm actually looking at the snail's code happening right now, and we may be able to see that in this stack frame. Yeah, we see the player down here, and that's because the player is what called this function. Anyways, let's go ahead and look at what's going on here. So when we did the knockback, remember we added this protection here to protect us from the animation player not being there. So if you look at the enemy snail, we never added an animation player to this. So that's what's happening is the this actor code is going, hey, I want to pass out now because the player took all the health from the snail, but this animation player isn't there. So I looked through this function, and if you look at this, we even say the player passed out, and then down here we're trying to load the main menu. So the bulk of this function is actually specifically related to the player. So we probably need to move this and make it player specific. So, but we do want to have a general pass out function that happens for everyone. So what I'm going to do is copy this and paste this into the player script. So I'll just scroll down to the bottom. Need to make sure it's at the right indentation level. And I'm just going to paste it in here. And I'm just going to leave this alone because I think it's fine the way it was for now. And we'll go back to the actor, and we want to make a general one that will happen for everyone else, basically. So all the other monsters will follow this one. And so what we did here is, so what I could say here is general passed out, and then this is called the player passed out. And what Godot will do is when you have a class, a base class like actor, and then you implement it again, you make that same function in a class that inherits from that one, so the player inherits from actor, this is what's called an override. So this one will no longer run, and this one will run instead. Okay? So that will allow me to have specific code for the player, but not and override what we do here, which will be a little bit more generic just for the snail, or all the enemies. Okay, so I do want to keep this in here because we may want to add a pass out animation, because I kind of want my snail to flip upside down or something when he passes out. So let's go ahead and do if that, then let's do this and that. Let's get rid of the game over and the scene reload, because we don't need those. We are going to mark it is passed out. And the last thing I want to do is queue free. Now this is up to you, but this will remove the snail from the scene once this animation finishes. Now in my case I don't have that animation yet, so he should just disappear. So let's go ahead and try that. So we'll do new game, and if I jump on top of the snail, he disappears after the second hit. And if I let the snail hit me, I still pass out, get the game over message, and it should in a second jump back to the main menu just like before. So excellent. So in this video we've refactored the we've added the ability for the player to jump on top of the snails and damage them, and we've also preserved some of our old functionality. One last little tweak I want to do that I just remembered is our drop maximum value is kind of low. I noticed it when I was jumping on top of the snails. He kind of gets a real floaty feeling to him. So I wanted to change that real quick, and I think that's here in our actor script. We've got a grav max. Change that to 30,000. I think that feels a little bit less floaty. It is nice having a max there so your character doesn't do some really wild stuff, but it feels a lot less floaty now, and he can really jump on those snails. So yeah, good stuff. Alright, in the next video I kind of want to start looking at the big picture of what we're going to try and do with this series. So I really want to get this game wrapped up because I've already got some new game ideas that I'd like to start looking at, and I'd like to kind of finish this one, but I do have some pretty big plans that might take a little while to do. So let's go ahead and start getting started on that. And so I'll see you next time. Thanks. Bye.